This week, I had the opportunity to participate in the Battlefield 2042 beta preview event, and I also jumped on the closed beta to see what the new game has to offer and see if it stands up to the hype. When I initially logged into the game for the very first time, I was actually greeted with an automatic weapon firing bug when I loaded in due to a control scheme problem that I later resolved after unbinding the R2 key on various keybinds in the settings. But after I figured that out, I was ready to set off on my journey, exploring everything that the beta had to offer. My first impression of the game was how exceptionally fast the movement felt with the addition of the power slide. Although Battlefield 5 also had a power slide, this was noticeably faster, and you had the ability to slide up and down hills at a consistent rate of speed on all surfaces and variations. This was kind of a surprise for me given my experience with the Battlefield games in the past, and I know that they're not trying to be a realistic shooter by any means, and nor should they try to be, but it just didn't feel like the traditional movement you'd expect to see in a Battlefield game. After getting used to the new movement controls, the next thing was the modification system. I will admit, it does look like a cool feature that may have gone a bit too far. I'm absolutely game for the interchangeable suppressors, optics, compensators, and magazine capacities in the middle of a match. What struck me as odd though was the introduction of different barrel sizes, underbarrel grenade launchers, and the biggest one of all, different ammunition calibers. Let me use the M5A3 as an example. In the game, you have the ability to change between standard rifle calibers, pistol cartridges, and heavy rounds similar to .308. You can make this change in seconds, and each caliber has its own unique ammunition table. This means if you run out of 5.56, you can change your M5A3 to .308 and get a completely new set of ammunition. The same goes for the LMG. You can go standard light ammunition and then make the change to armor-piercing rounds. Not only is this faster than reloading the actual magazine, but combined with a separate ammunition table, you're now able to carry 400 rounds. It's actually kind of wild. This means that weapons with more customization when it comes to ammunition types have larger ammo capacities available to them. So eventually, after I learned this, I decided to stop carrying the ammo box and switch to running armor plates. On top of all that, the enemies that you kill in 2042 also drop small ammo caches that allow you to resupply like you were running a perk from the Call of Duty games. This allows you to stay topped off without the need of running to a support unit that has ammunition boxes available to them. I understand that this is a beta feature and the system will most likely change in the future, and there's many reasons on why they may have decided to do this. You're not able to actually customize your weapon outside the game, forcing you to choose the ammo while you're in the field, and maybe at the game launch this will be a little bit different. We also don't know much about how weapons are actually going to be progressing, how you're going to be unlocking attachments and different ammunition types, and how extensive out-of-game customization will be. Now let's talk a little bit about the operators. There's 4 operators that you can choose from in 4 different classes. You have a recon operator that has a drone that can be used to spot enemies, a medic that has a gun that's able to actually self-heal themselves or teammates that are around them. You have a heavy infantry with a sentry turret, and a light infantry with a grappling hook. Each one of these operators has their own name, story, and a skin that sets them apart from each other. And I'm calling them by their roles just to help identify how they can be used for the sake of the video. It's important to note though, the recon unit has that drone that can spot enemies because you're unable to actually use Q if you're playing on PC to spot enemies, identify airplanes, tanks, and other units that are on the field. Using that recon drone during the beta is the only way that you can really do that efficiently. The same goes for using any sort of keybind that can help you like yell for ammunition, ask for medical support, ask to be picked up for a drive. So I suspect that will be added to the game before the actual game releases in November, or at least I hope that they add that. Although these bring something new to the table in Battlefield, this also introduces a number of unique problems as well. First, let's talk about the biggest issue. Everybody looks the same. If you're friendly or foe, the skins of the operators are identical. This makes close quarters combat very confusing, and it also breaks that sense of immersion. I can only suspect skins will be added at some point to each one of these characters, allowing a little bit more diversity on the field. We also only got to see 4 of the operators during the beta as well, and there will be many more coming down the line. But despite this, the issue remains. and I really hope they introduce some way of telling the enemy operators apart from friendlies and foes more than just a red icon over their head and seeing their name. You can also customize each operator to be whatever class you'd like, and honestly, that's probably a good thing. You can use any weapon with any combination of operator, allowing you to greatly expand the gameplay type you like. And you can also do that with equipment, anti-air, anti-tank, ammunition, medical boxes, armor plates, and so on. You can have full customization over all the operators. With this though, we also lose the traditional Battlefield roles. No more specifically having designated medics, support, engineer, recon, and infantry units. Each one of the operators can be so heavily customized to do each role or a mixture of both. Every player could also revive their teammates, but this was kind of buggy during the beta test. If you tried to revive one of your fallen allies, you would frequently just pick up their gun, giving them your gun over and over again before you actually revive them. And this caused you to lose your equipment whenever they got back up, and you can't really trade when everyone's alive. You can only pick up downed weapons. And because of this, many players just started to neglect reviving their allies altogether. Battlefield 2042 also introduces armor plating as an equipment piece. This takes the equipment support slot. You're given 2 plates that will give you some bonus health, allowing you to tank more damage. And after I learned a bit more about the ammo from the dead players and from different calibers, I actually just started running these plates almost exclusively. Another reason why I decided to pretty much exclusively run armor plating is because I tried running anti-air and anti-tank. Anti-air wasn't that effective at all against helicopters or planes, and even if I actually hit somebody, it would never really cause significant damage. The flare regeneration was also extremely fast on the helicopters and jets, so even if I did wait for the flares to cook off, I would launch my rocket and they would likely get a chance to use their flares again. Anti-tank was similar but more effective than anti-air. With a few shots you could damage or destroy a tank, and you can destroy ground vehicles like trucks and jeeps pretty fast. Although these anti-tank rockets were doing a little bit of damage to the tanks, C4 or C5 is still the best way to remove enemy ground vehicles in Battlefield. Now, since we're on the topic of explosives, I mentioned the grenade launcher a bit earlier with the weapon modification system. The M5A3 has one available, and given how easy it is to select it in the modification window, you basically always have one on you. Within seconds, you have access to the tool before changing back to the foregrip, and there's really no reason to keep it on at all times unless you think you need it immediately in a pinch. Now let's talk a little bit more about the weapons. I'm going to be starting off with the sidearms. You get a G57, or it's a traditional Glock, and a 44 Magnum. Both of these weapons I found to be super useful, reliable, and fun to use. The Magnum can also be fitted with a decent optic, and it can one-shot enemies to the head and two-shot them to the body. This, in my opinion, made it the best DMR in the beta because the velocity and the drop of the round was very forgiving, and I felt that it was more reliable than the DM7. So since we're on the topic of the DM7, let's talk about it. It's a semi-automatic DMR, and it's, in my opinion, one of the worst weapons out of all of your options in the beta. First, it takes too many rounds to kill your enemy, it takes 2 headshots to kill them, it has a limited fire rate even though it's a semi-automatic weapon, and the velocity of the round is extremely slow. The optic that is available also gives you less magnification than the Magnum optic, and although you can use more powerful rounds with modification features, I found this gun to be extremely unreliable and hard to use in such a fast-paced game. The SWS-10 is the bolt-action sniper for the game. It's pretty standard, 2 shots to the body, 1 shot to the head. It also features a lighter ammunition option that does less damage for more reload speed and weapon handling, but these rounds are basically your backup if you run out of the base ammunition. This weapon also has extremely slow velocity. You can make the velocity even slower if you wanted to if you add a suppressor. This masks your location on the map, but the trade-off is the ability to lead accurately at distance or land longer shots. I still had fun sniping though and plinking with the SWS, so it's much better than the DM7, and it's not a bad bolt action, it's just limited with the pacing of Battlefield 2042 being so fast. Now let's talk about the MCX-880, the pump-action shotgun for Battlefield 2042. You have the option to run slugs or buckshot, and there's a variety of different weapon modifications like optics and such. But I found that if you weren't right in somebody's face, it was impossible to actually compete with the better weapons. It was very slow, hefty, and honestly, forgettable. Every single time I tried to run this shotgun, it was letdown after letdown. Just the damage drop off. You had to be so close to people. And with the SMGs and the rifles being so good in 2042, by the time you even got remotely close to somebody, unless you were playing slow, camping in a corner, you weren't really able to kill them. And because the rate of fire was extremely slow with the pump action, it was hard to even get the second shot on target unless they were completely oblivious to your presence. This is coming from somebody that absolutely loves shotguns in modern video games. I play Escape from Tarkov, and shotguns are some of my favorite weapons. Also coming from a Halo guy that even recognizes that the Halo shotgun is completely unrealistic, but still has a purpose and a place. And the previous Battlefield shotguns, especially even in Battlefield 5, were extremely fun, responsive, and reliable. So the MCS 880 is a complete miss for shotgun representation in Battlefield. Now, moving on, the LCMG is the light machine gun in the beta, and it's not bad at all. It comes with 2 ammo types, giving you a total of 400 rounds. You can even damage little birds with the armor-piercing rounds, not enough to really destroy them, but enough to be a pest and to push them off the spot. The one thing I noticed about the LCMG is it has a weapon rate of fire creep that's not consistent. It starts off firing really slow and then ramps up like you're firing a minigun. It also takes about 6 shots to actually kill an enemy, so you gotta really land those shots and open up well before they see you. Although the weapon was a bit different than what I was used to with LMGs, it was still a lot of fun, but clearly not the best option for any distances in the actual game. Next, we're talking about that AK-24, and it's one of the 3 guns that you can actually unlock while playing the beta. It's not that bad of a weapon, but the M5A3 does everything the AK-24 can do, but better. The AK has relatively low damage output given how much recoil there is, and even though you have the ability to put like more damaging ammunition, which I'm assuming is 7.62 by 39, it adds so much additional recoil that it's really not worth it. The AK-24 does feature a really great scope, the Bravo, and it's one of the only guns in the beta that can actually run it. Next up is the M5A3. It's clearly the most versatile weapon in the beta. You can run rifle ammunition, pistol ammunition, heavy DMR ammunition. It has low recoil, red dots, mid-range scopes, underbarrel grenade launchers, different muzzle devices, and a fast kill time. If you have an M5A3 in your hands and you're facing off against an enemy running the previous weapons I was talking about, you're going to have a clear advantage close, mid, and at range. This gun serves every purpose in the game, and it does it almost better than all of them except for the last 2 weapons. First, the PBX-45, which is a UMP-style SMG that has great recoil control, great rate of fire, and a really fast kill time. The weapon is not only fast at killing point blank, but pretty reliable at the mid-range. You also have the option to switch to smaller magazines for increased handling. Although these magazines fire the same round, you get a completely different ammunition pool, giving you more magazines at your disposal. The PBX-45 was my favorite weapon during the beta. I ran it with a suppressor, iron sights, and a grip, and I used that in combination with a scoped 45 Magnum. Now, the last weapon we're going to be talking about in this video is the K30. This is a vector style weapon with an extremely fast rate of fire that comes with some intense recoil. But if you pull down on the recoil with your mouse and try to manage it, it's one of the best guns in the game for close and mid-range combat. Your enemies will not be able to match your damage output, and for fast-paced arena-style players, this is the gun for you. Now, that was a lot of information to take in, so let me just give you a quick summary. If you're not using the M5A3, the PBX-45, or the K30, you're going to be putting yourself at an unfair disadvantage most of the time. The LCMG and the AK-24 are just good enough, but you'll find you'll be handicapping yourself for the sake of trying new things, or at least that's kind of how I felt. So let's talk briefly about the vehicles. Although I mainly focus on infantry in Battlefield games, the vehicles are extremely familiar to the franchise, and players from Battlefield 4 should feel right at home with their controls. The tanks, Anti-air, helicopters, jets, and the Jeeps all feel right at home and definitely gives you that Battlefield vibe. Although there are certainly some things the vehicles can improve on, I can confidently say it's the most authentically Battlefield feature from 2042, where, in my opinion, most of the other features are extremely different from what typical players expect. So, long story short, what do I actually think of the game? This beta gives us a very slim glimpse of what Battlefield 2042 is going to be. There are still additional game modes we don't know much about, a wide variety of weapons and modifications we need to use, operators and maps and vehicles to discover. There's also the portal mode, which should greatly expand the customization of private Battlefield servers, giving us the ability to create experiences we want from our Battlefield games. But putting all of that aside and objectively looking at what was given to us during this beta experience, I'm worried. I'm worried about the operator system. I'm worried about the weapon balance and the pace of the game. I'm also worried about the ability to use your gun like a Swiss Army knife and having access to basically everything, and the ability to change even your barrels, uppers, lowers, and calibers in simply seconds. This to me removes the uniqueness of weapon builds that you can share with other players or even find on the battlefield. And I didn't even mention, if you pick up an enemy's gun, you can fully customize every aspect of that gun. And isn't that just a little bit odd? Even though there was much that I didn't like about the game, I couldn't help myself but continue to play the beta solo and with friends. But even if I was having fun at moments, I was constantly thinking about the things that I didn't like, worried about new features that I didn't feel were like Battlefield, and annoyed that every ally and enemy looked identical. It just felt strange. All in all, I'm disappointed. That's just kind of how I feel. I'll still be checking out the game at launch and to see what improvements can be made, but it was a struggle for sure. I want to end this video by mentioning during the preview event, the developers did say that this beta build was a few months old and they've made some significant strides in certain areas. So we'll have to wait and see what that means on release day. Well, that about sums up my review of the Battlefield 2042 beta. I wanted to be completely open and honest about my impression of the beta, and at the end of the day, it's just a demo of what's to come. I'm sure they'll be looking at all the player feedback and trying to make the adjustments and changes before the launch. Before you guys head back to the void of the internet, thanks for watching today's video. I just want to let you guys know that we have new merch available right now until October 15th. Some jokes and memes from the stream. We got Lock the Differentials from the legendary SnowRunner series, and then also Woods Main, because I play a lot of Woods on Tarkov and people keep calling me a Woods Main. They're a limited edition for a limited time. Again, only available until October 15th. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.